Hey guys, today we have a special guest, Kylie Ross. I'm going to give you a little background about how her and I started, and I'm going to let her kind of take over and tell her story, and then we'll kind of get into some questions that a lot of you guys asked me through Instagram. So Kylie posted a vlog a little while ago. So a little backstory, she played soccer at Baylor for the last 4 to 5 years, and she's about to graduate. And her vlog, she titled it My ACL Recovery, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, my ACL recovery story. And it caught my eye, obviously being the ACL nerd or geek, whatever you want to call me that it was. So I watched it, and immediately it just struck a chord with me because it made me think about what my athletes, my high school, my college athletes had to go through, and just the experiences that they had. And it just really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to Kylie on Instagram, hopefully in a non-creepy way. And I was just like, Kylie, like, are you willing to tell your story? And and that's her story really made me want to start this podcast in the first place. So Kylie, I appreciate you giving me the inspiration to do that. And I know that your story definitely touched a lot of my patients. I literally got DMs, and I had a patient literally walk in the door 3 days after and tell me that he watched your vlog, the entire thing, and he cried right away because of how he related to your honesty about your experience through ACL rehab. So I'm going to let you take over, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll dive into some questions in a little bit.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Kylie Ross, and I have played soccer at Baylor for 5 years now. I am currently getting my master's of arts in biology here, and I'm in my last semester, so I'm really excited to graduate and move forward. But yeah, I started my YouTube channel like I think in August, and basically I started just to document my last year of soccer. Like I was telling Wesley, I was like, oh, was going to show my kids these videos one day. Like it was literally just for fun. And then it just took off. And I've built this community of people who just appreciate college sports and fitness and athletics. And it's been really fun just interacting with a whole new group of people. And I was getting a lot of DMs, honestly, like daily, saying like, tell your ACL story, because I have like the big ACL scar on my knee. Yeah. And I was nervous to share it because it is like not a happy story, obviously. And I try and keep things like really fun and positive on my channel and stuff. So I was like, okay, a lot of people are asking for this. Like, I'll give it to them. That's what they want. Like, I'll tell the real raw story. And the response I got was like just really crazy. Like, I had like over 300 comments on the video, just people like pouring out their hearts, like telling me their own stories, and DMs on Instagram. Like, so many people just like coming to me saying like they've had the same struggles as me throughout their ACL, even if it wasn't ACL, throughout their injury. And yeah, it was just crazy. I was just like so happy that I could be almost like a support system for people who have been through the same injury, because like I know how difficult it is, and it is easily the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. And I think like that was why it was so hard to share, is because like that was the hardest time I've ever been through. And sharing your raw feelings when you're not even like mentally like okay is, I don't know, it's hard, but I think it needs to be done. So yeah.
I think that's definitely what people relate to the most, was the rawness and the realness of your video. I think you were very honest with your experiences, which I think is important in the rehab process, particularly when you're dealing with ACL rehab. It's long. You told me before we hopped on that you were in rehab for 10, 11 months at a time before you were healthy to play soccer again. And I think that having that support throughout the entire journey is extremely important. And it's something that I really try to practice in my everyday interactions with my patients. At this point, 75% of my patients are ACL, so I see them every single day. And having gone through it myself, it's just something that it's invaluable and goes far beyond just, the knee, the muscles and all that kind of stuff. The psychological side, in my opinion, is equally, if not even more important than just the physical portion of it. And I think that you'll see that later on when we get to the questions part, that a lot of questions that people ask you are about like mental tips and things like that. So I think that
Yeah.
a lot of people will learn from your experience with just how you dealt with it, being a high level athlete in college, managing all that kind of stuff. In your video, you spoke about being alone during the rehab process, and something that a lot of my college athletes share with me as well. Do you mind actually elaborating a little bit on that?
Yeah. That was easily the worst part about the entire injury. And I think it kind of stems back to, I mean, me personally being on like a team sport, it's like that team camaraderie is like what you miss. Cause like, yeah, you go to practice every day and you like see your friends every day, but it's not the same. You're not out there like grinding with your teammates and like pushing your body like as far as it can go, like with your best friends next to you, and they're telling you like, come on, keep going, and like cheering you on. But like you're grinding just as hard in rehab and nobody sees it. And
Yep.
I think that's one of the hardest things. Like, it, no offense to you, but like the physical therapist, like patient relationship can only go so far. Like
Yeah.
you miss that like teammate camaraderie, like people constantly like building you up and like pushing you further. And it's hard because you kind of have to be that for yourself. And it gets just really exhausting. Like for me personally, that was just the biggest thing that I struggled with was, I don't know, I'm a perfectionist and like very competitive, so I always want to like be perfect, and an injury just really like rocked my world because I was out for so long and I wasn't going to be perfect at every single check mark. In fact, I was less than perfect at every single check mark, which was really something that was really hard for me to deal with. So, I mean, it's hard to explain like the loneliness because you're not alone, but it mentally, like it feels like you are.
Yeah. I think no matter what, you are somewhat alienated in a way from your teammates, because at the end of the day, everyone, the coaches, the players, and all that kind of stuff know that you are injured and recovering. But the other, whatever, 15, 20, 25 girls on the team are healthy, playing, practicing, all that kind of stuff. And no matter what, all that, like you said, the on-field stuff, you cannot ever replicate to that same capacity. In rehab, you're not sprinting to the same capacity as you would in a game. Your heart rate's not racing, all that kind of stuff that it's hard to really feel in rehab. And I think that no matter what, it's something that I do my best to try and be a part of. I try to make rehab as fun as possible because, you know, it's a crappy injury. We talked about it right before you hopped on. It's an awful injury.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I can make it just even whatever, 5-10%, a little bit more enjoyable, then I feel like I'm doing my job. And I think for you, that's exactly why I thought that your story was just so compelling, because people don't talk about being isolated enough. And especially when you're in a college setting, and it's hard, you know, in colleges, there's so many athletes to worry about, for the trainers, the coaches, and all that kind of stuff. It's hard for them to give you that undivided attention that you, Kylie, needed during your 10 to 11 months of rehab. I know that you also mentioned that you had extra difficulties also, because you mentioned in your vlog that you had a wonderful Cyclops lesion. Do you mind
I
walking
love
us
it.
through a little bit about that as well? Because I know a lot of people don't
Yeah.
really understand what a Cyclops lesion is.
Yeah, I didn't even know what it was, honestly, until I got it. And then I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I was struggling so bad. But it's basically a buildup of scar tissue. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like a big buildup of scar tissue. And mine was like right under my kneecap.
Yep.
So all throughout my injury, I was really struggling getting specifically my extension, but also my flexion. My extension was stuck at like 5 degrees. Like I could not get it any further than 5 degrees. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, that's not good. Like people's knees can like hyperextend to like -degrees. And so
Yeah.
this was like permanently like, eh.
Yep.
So it made things very difficult when it came to hopping, running, cutting, because I couldn't get that full extension. And I was just so confused as to why, because there were other people who had tore their ACL right around the same time, and they were just so much faster than me. And
Mm-hmm.
had no idea like why I was going so slow until I got an MRI and it showed the Cyclops lesion. So I did have to go back in and get a scope. And that was the best part about my whole recovery. As soon as I woke up from the scope, I could literally feel that my knee was better. Like I could straighten it. And I was like, oh, I told my mom, I was like, I'm healed. I'm better. Like I can play again.
Yeah.
So that was so much better, but it kind of gave me a little bit of false confidence. And I really hit rehab hard, like not only in rehab, but I would go and do extra on my own. And I ended up giving myself like really severe tendinitis. And yeah, that was like the most pain like I've ever felt. So I ended up having to get a PRP, which is a plasma injection. That was not fun. And then that kind of helped, not a ton. It's kind of a long-term thing. It doesn't help right away. So yeah, I don't know. The setbacks were real and they were tough, but
yeah. And to follow up with what you just said, you stated that there are other athletes that were recovering from ACL tear roughly around the same surgery date and timeline as you. But I'm sure you felt like because of the Cyclops and the fact that you didn't have extension and things like that, you were falling a little bit behind. And I'm guessing that furthermore just, in a sense, alienated yourself a little more because you're like, why can't I do what they're doing? They were probably jogging a little bit earlier than you, running a little bit earlier than you. How did you deal with that portion of it when you're literally seeing other people who are supposed to be on the same quote unquote level as you are, but they're going here and you're kind of like stuck here because of your extension?
Yeah, that was like really tough for me because like I said, like I am very competitive and very like perfectionist. So not being the best, like I want to be the best at rehab too. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I definitely wasn't. So that was really hard for me to deal with, but like looking back now, like every rehab path is like so individualized. Like you never know what problems you're going to run into. And I wish that I had just had a little more grace with myself and like my body, because I mean I was doing the best that I could and I knew that, but I mean it's really hard to deal with as an athlete just because like you do want to push yourself like that extra mile and like be the best, and you think like doing extra is only going to help you, but like in this case it did hurt me. And yeah, that was just like really tough to deal with, honestly. But
yeah, I definitely appreciate you saying the best line you just said right there was the fact that rehab should be individualized. I think that's something I preach a lot to all of my athletes, because at the end of the day, especially when you're in a college setting and you're in that big facility and you know there's a bunch of tables around and you're seeing the person who's rehabbing right next to you and you're just like, wow, they're doing that, but like I'm doing like something a little more simple at this moment. It's really hard not to compare yourself because you're just like, oh, they had surgery 3 months ago. I had surgery 3 months ago. Like we should be doing the exact same thing. Or like you said, you're competitive. So you're like, I should be doing more than what that person should be doing. But at the end of the day, it's so individualized. And that's something I try to preach a lot on my social media account, is the fact that ACL rehab is so individualized. I hate the protocols that are in play nowadays, because they just give a new grad a piece of paper that states that in 3 months, Kylie should be jogging. In 5 months, she should be doing this. And at 6-7 months, Kylie should be back playing sports. But then you see all these timelines and you didn't hit those timelines. So it's like, what does that do to you mentally? I'm more so just a big fan of like, hey, Kylie, let's come in. We're going to get you a little better each day. And then like based on your progress, be like, yeah, I think you'll probably be jogging in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, cool. You hit that landmark. Now let's go to the next thing. And then we're going to start doing light cutting and then put a ball on your feet. And then it's just like, let's just keep building. I'm much more a fan of that, as opposed to being like, hey, Kylie, 3 months, you're jogging. Oh, you're not jogging at 3 months. Oh no, you're in trouble. It's inevitable. You're going to be thinking about that. And my athletes that work with me know that I rarely give them timelines. The big questions are like, right after surgery, when can I jog? When can I play sports? 2 biggest questions. I'm sure you ask the same questions, right?
Yeah.
And I pretty much tell them that I can't give you an answer. I give them like minimums of like, you're definitely not jogging until then, but it also based on how you progress type of thing. Again, it's very, very individualized. So I definitely appreciate the fact that through your experiences, you learned the fact that your rehab journey is very different than the next person's or the next person's. It's your journey and not anyone else's. So I definitely really appreciate you saying that.
It's also hard because you do hear about like all those miracle stories of people like coming back in 6 months or 4 months, and you're like, that's gonna be me.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, it's not gonna be you. Like,
Yeah.
majority of the time it's not you. And I also had the same issue. I'm sure I annoyed my physical therapist so bad because I would come in every day and say, I need a calendar. I need you to literally write out when I'm going to be doing what, like what days I need to be doing what. And they would give me like a rough estimate, but I would beg them for it. Like, literally, I needed a calendar. And it is hard because you do have that protocol, and like when you aren't hitting those dates, like it honestly makes you feel like a failure.
Yeah.
Because it's like I didn't hit the marks that I was supposed to hit. Like, what, as an athlete, like that's all your life has consisted of, is like meeting marks. So
Yep.
yeah, it's really tough. But
yeah, athletes just want to compete, and you wanted to compete at, even in your rehab, you're like, I want to compete. I want to make sure I hit all these goals. And unfortunately, it took you probably a little while to realize, but you didn't meet the quote unquote goals, but you still got to where you needed to get to. It just took you a little bit longer than it took the next person, which is okay. You still ended up finishing out your season after that. And I know you played last season also, which is how you and I got connected in the first place, because you decided to start your vlog. So I think that at the end of the day, all these things more or less happen for a reason. And I think it's really cool that you've learned through it. And I think that you'll realize that a lot of the questions from social media are about the psychological side of rehab and how you dealt with it as an athlete, the mental side, all that kind of stuff. And like we talked about earlier, it's just not something that's really talked about enough. So I'm going to get into the first question from Instagram. And the first question was, psychologically, how tough was the early phases of rehab? So we're talking, let's call the early phase the first 2 months or so. So right after surgery to about 2 months. And the follow-up question after that is, did it get easier as your rehab progressed?
Yeah, so the first 2 months of rehab, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, they suck.
Yeah.
Like, that was the worst time of my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if like much about the surgery part of it, but I didn't have a nerve block, which I don't know. My surgeon, he was a really great surgeon, and I like had no idea like what even that was, and if I was supposed to get one, if I wasn't supposed to get one, but he doesn't do them. And I have a friend right now who actually just got surgery, and she got it with the same doctor that I got it with, so she also doesn't have a nerve block. And she compared it to with the nerve block, and she was like, Kylie, it is night and day. Like, the first 5 days after surgery were the worst days of her life. And I'm like, thank you for affirming what I was feeling. Like, thank you. But yeah, those were really tough. I said in my video, like I cried myself to sleep probably every night for the first week, because I had no idea what to expect. And I mean, your muscles atrophy, and like it feels like your body is just like giving out on you. But it's hard because you can't see the long-term goal at that moment, but you have to keep it in mind in order to stay positive. Like, you have to think of the long-term goal. And but it's really, really tough mentally. Just everything kind of like being taken away from you just like that. And but you have to think of it as like a fresh start. Like, this is the beginning, and you're trying to meet that end goal, and you have to get through like the first really tough parts in the beginning, and then you kind of get the ball rolling, and it does get easier because you can start running. And once you hit all these checkpoints, it's like, okay, I'm like moving, like I'm reaching that end goal of what I'm trying to get to, which is get back to playing. So yeah.
Okay. So it seems like you started to realize that you need to focus on I guess more so the now and living in the now, and focusing on like, okay, we're going to work towards this next goal and then hit that goal. Let's get to the next goal type of thing, as opposed to being like soccer is months and months and months away. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a big thing of what athletes need to focus on in rehab, and something I tell them is like, let's just try and get better every single day. Let's get 1% better, 1% better. Because if you keep thinking about the end goal of whatever sport you're playing in 9, 10, 11 months, whatever it is, it's so daunting, because it's like, wow, that's really, really far away. But I think focusing on small victories is so, so important in rehab. And I think that you took a little while to learn it after the nerve block incident, all that kind of stuff. It's tough. I mean, especially with the nerve block, what I've just learned about you is that you are, you are tough as nails. If you didn't have a nerve block, you are tough as nails. There are positives behind it. And just briefly is the fact that they don't have to shut off anything. And usually your quad can come back a little bit quicker, which I'm guessing is why your doctor chose not to get a nerve block, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, he's a great surgeon.
Yeah.
Like, no shade to him or anything.
Yeah.
He did a great job. But I just personally didn't even know what that was. I had never known like nerve block versus no nerve block. So when I'm telling my friends who got their surgery by different doctors, like, I didn't have a nerve block, and they were like, oh, it's so easy. Like, the first 5 days, no big deal. I was like, am I a baby? Like, am I a baby? I don't know. But no, I realize now. So
yeah, definitely not. In fact, you're actually tougher because you didn't get a nerve block. So you can put that, you can throw it. Yeah. And related to the psychological side, this is more so from the flip side of like your supporting community. So somebody asked, like, what would you recommend for, teammates, friends, coaches, your rehab team? What can they do to help better support someone going through ACL rehab?
I am really big on this question. I love this question because I feel like it is just so difficult. When someone tears their ACL, you honestly don't even know what to say to them, because it's just like, it's so horrible, and nothing that you say can really make it better. But the rehab process is so long and so tedious that you touched on it earlier, like the little goals and the little check marks are so important for like keeping your mind healthy. Because as a teammate and as a friend, I try and like practice this anytime anyone goes through an ACL, because it's something that I wish that I would have had. And like the biggest thing that I can say is just to like celebrate the little goals with them, because it is so lonely that like when you finally get cleared to run, it's like, yay, you're cleared to run, like you get a pat on the back, but like you miss that team camaraderie of like celebrating things together. And like, this is so big for you personally, and like going through that, I now understand that, and I know to like celebrate those little moments. Like if your friend gets cleared to run, like bring her ice cream, like take her out to dinner, like celebrate with her. Like that is so big for her recovery. If she gets to cut, or she reaches a new goal on her extension like degrees, like it's the little things that you learn to appreciate when you're going through the rehab process. But if you've never been through an injury, you don't really know how big those things are to people recovering. So that is the biggest thing as a teammate. And I do want to touch on the coach aspect a little bit. It is so difficult. I can't even imagine to balance like the healthy players with the non-healthy players. And just my coaches are fantastic. I love them so much. But it's really tough as a coach to remember to like include the injured players, because like you said earlier, like we are still people, like we're not just injured. And I think it's hard, coaches forget, because it is a business for them. Like it's their job. But like how do I say this? When you're injured, it's almost like you're not useful anymore. And I know they don't try to make you feel that way, but like for me, that's how I felt. Like I wasn't of use to them anymore, because I couldn't run, I couldn't play. And so I think like as a coach, just keep that in the back of your mind for the injured players. Like that is how we feel. Most people I think would agree. Like you just feel not useful to the team anymore. And I think like, I'm not sure how to really give you advice on how to make us feel better, but just for coaches, like keep that in the back of your mind because it is like really important.
Yeah.
So
And it's something that I've heard, unfortunately, I've heard from some of my college athletes. And like you said, it is hard, and we're not blaming anyone necessarily because they have a job to do. Their job is to build up a program, win games and things like that. And it's hard for them to
yeah,
focus on every little detail here and there, because at the end of the day, someone recovering from ACL is not going to be on the field or on the court, whatever it is. So it's hard for them to see, every single thing. But I think and it's what we alluded to earlier about just feeling alienated, and that doesn't help the cause of feeling alienated.
yeah,
So I think that it's definitely something that is important for coaches to recognize, because if you haven't experienced that magnitude of an injury, then like you said, you don't know. And it's hard to fault someone who doesn't know what it's like to go through this level of injury. I think that's why I really am conscious of keeping tabs on my college athletes when they're in school, just texting them like, how are you doing? How's your rehab going? How's school? Small little things like that, just so they recognize that I'm still with them, even though I'm whatever, miles and miles away type of thing. Just anything I can to just help with the mental side, and just having them understand that I'm with you. I'm on your team until you step back on the field or until you tell me to go away. Those are the two big things I tell them. And like you just said earlier about celebrating the small, which I don't think they're small. They're big as far as like being able to jog with no pain, things like that. Those are
yeah.
big victories. I remember so distinctly. I'm working with a girl right now. She's about 6-7 months out. She had a meniscus repair, so it took a little bit longer. And then she started jogging. She looked really good. And her mom was picking her up one day, and it was like her first or second day jogging. I was like, "Go get your mom." So she ran out to the car, got her mom. Her mom came in, watched her run up and down our turf field, and her mom was about to be in tears. And it was just such a cool
Oh,
thing
yeah, that's
because
awesome.
it's like it just creates buy-in. And like I post a lot of my athletes on my social media because some of their parents will follow me too, and they love showing. Even if they're not, the kid can go home and show their mom or dad, be like, "Hey mom, look what I did today." And that same mom and dad, like, they love seeing their kid went from jogging and now she's cutting, now she's shooting with a lacrosse stick and stuff. What I mean? It's like, it's the process of building up to where she is now. And they're seeing, like, literally my daughter is getting better from this week to this week. But it's not about like, oh, at 12 weeks she hit this landmark, or at 24 weeks she hit this landmark. It's just
Yeah,
she's getting better. So I think it's something that it's very important to make sure that we celebrate these things. And like you said, with the whole network of people around that individual, everyone needs to make sure that you're just checking in, like, how's your rehab going? Like, is there anything I can do to help? Small little things like that. And like you said, like, everyone can always eat ice cream. That's definitely
yeah,
something that people can always use to celebrate.
yeah.
Um, and this is flipping back to you. It's a tough question to ask, 12, and maybe a tough question for you to answer. But did you ever feel like you weren't going to make it back to playing soccer? Maybe not like ever, but maybe to the same level as you were used to playing before your injury. That might be a little bit of a better question.
Yeah. I don't think I ever thought like I'm never gonna play soccer again, but I was terrified of the fact that I like wouldn't be the same player. I wouldn't be as fast. I wouldn't be as tough. I wouldn't be able to like shoot the ball as good. I wouldn't be able to pass the ball as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those were always like in the back of my head, but that's a really dangerous hole to spiral down because you never know.
Yeah.
Like you don't know how good you're going to be when you come back. And I'm going to be honest, like I'm not the same player that I was. I'm just as good. I'm just different. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was like difficult for me to come to terms with because like I wanted to be that player that I once was. And you probably won't be that player, but you might be better
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. So I never really thought I was never going to make it back to the sport, but I was terrified that I wasn't going to be as good as I once was, which I don't think is the case. Yeah, but be careful with asking yourself that question because it is like it can like you can spiral a little bit, like
Yeah. It's
yeah,
just like you said, you're always in that aspect, you're comparing yourself to yourself,
exactly.
which is equally as dangerous, if not even more dangerous, because you're just going to keep comparing yourself to something that may never happen, or it's just an unrealistic expectation. Maybe that's a better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
And do you mind elaborating a little more on what you mean by how you said that right now you feel a little bit different? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of athletes are curious about.
So I don't, with my knee, I don't feel different in my knee. I honestly like forget that I even got ACL surgery on this knee. It feels normal. It feels strong. It feels great. I would say one thing that I'm different is that my speed was something that was really hard for me to get back. Just after being out a year, like the fast twitch muscles in your body, like
Yep.
they don't work as well.
Yeah.
I am probably in better shape than I've ever been in. I'm stronger than I've ever been. I think I see the field better, like my passing and stuff like that is better. So I am better in all these categories, but I feel like I'm slower.
Okay.
And that stinks, but like, I'm just different. I'm a different player. I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard to explain. I don't think I'm worse at all. I would even say I'm better in some areas, but some areas it was really hard for me to get back.
Yeah. Yeah. That speed is definitely, the speed and the power aspect are very, very challenging to get back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely appreciate you sharing that aspect of it. I know I'm sure it's probably hard because you're like, I should be able to catch that person, or I should be able to chase down that ball. And it's just like a little fraction a little bit slower than maybe you were prior to surgery. But I'm glad to hear that you kind of maybe just thought the game a little differently. And maybe that's what you learned, in a sense, sitting on the sidelines for a year, just soaking in the game a little more. You know, you're upping your IQ in a sense. And I think that's a big thing I try to relate to my athletes too, is like, let's try and make this experience as positive as possible. You know, I think that it's important I try to be more of a glass half full guy as opposed to a glass half empty guy. You know, let's focus on what you can do and not what you can't do. And what you can do is you can still, you know, I work with a lot of lacrosse athletes. So like, let's just work on your wall ball. Let's just work on your handling a little bit, while you can still stand, you can walk a little bit. Maybe you can't run, but you can still work on these things. And all these little nuances that you're doing now is only going to set you up for success when you're getting ready for that like late end stage return to sport play type of thing, which is equally as challenging. And that kind of relates me to the next question is, somebody asked, what helped you get back to game speed? And when what helped you get back to game speed when you first started playing? And maybe some advice that you can offer to any athlete that's kind of in that, you know, 8, 9, 10 month time frame, as far as going back to soon getting ready to play.
That was one of the toughest parts of the recovery process, because you're there and you're like cleared and you're like doing soccer and you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And then you get back and you're like, this doesn't feel the same. I am bad. Like, I can't do this. Like, but now, after going through this, I am just the biggest advocate for giving yourself grace, because you will get back to normal. I can't tell you when, because it's different for everybody. I'm going to be honest. It took me a solid like 7 months after I started playing to like feel normal again, like not consciously think about my knee, like every cut, every step, every tackle, every hard tackle. Those are the scary ones. Every hard tackle. And like, I can't say when it gets better, but it just does. Like one day I stopped thinking about my knee. Like I just stopped thinking about it. And every time I go out on the soccer field, I don't think about my knee anymore. Like, it's just second nature. I trust my knee. I know that it's going to like take me far because I put in the work before. And some advice I would give is do the things that are scary for you, and go out and do by yourself. Don't do it with people around. Like, if you mess up, like, it's not embarrassing. It's not scary. Like, you're not going to get hurt. But if like turning with the ball quickly is scary for you and you've been cleared to do that, then practice that. Practice that, because it's only going to get easier. But yeah, that's a hard question.
You're hitting a lot of the major things that I relate to my patients, particularly in the late stage of rehab. One of my biggest questions I ask an athlete is, how did you tear your ACL? That usually is the last thing to come back as far as that mental aspect. For me personally, I went up for a layup in basketball and someone came from behind me and knocked me out in the air and my leg unfortunately went under me. And the unspoken rule is when you're going up for a layup like that, you shouldn't turn around. I remember for the first 3 to 4 to 5 months, every time someone was behind me, I would be terrified. It's just scary to replicate those situations at the same speed as a game. But at the same time, for me as a PT, I try to put them in the same situation as much as possible. Obviously, they know here when we have the turf space and all that kind of stuff, it's a controlled environment because I'm not going to physically push you as much as maybe another player would in a game, but I'm still going to get you used to at least taking some contact, because that is usually the scariest part. I know most people have non-contact injuries, but still getting used to getting hit, getting knocked down, like you said, going in for a tackle and like sliding your body in there with another person, 2 people around you. It's terrifying to do. And that's those really, really specific situations are by far the hardest to replicate. You know, I can replicate you chasing a ball down, me giving you a little bit of nudge here and there, chasing and things like that, but I can't replicate that same intensity, speed. Those are the hardest things to replicate. And like you said, nobody, I don't care who it is, can tell you when you are 100% cleared. Someone can tell you when you're physically cleared. And that's what all these tests and all that stuff was for. But as far as like that aha click moment, nobody can tell you. And you took 7 months, and I think I was honestly about the same. I think I was like 18 months before I really felt like I was like, oh wow, I can play basketball now. I don't have to think about anything anymore. And that's why I think nowadays they're saying it does take 18 to 24 months for a full recovery. And that's outside of the physical, because I do think the mental part is the part that takes the longest. Because like you said, you passed all these tests, you knew that you were cleared, multiple people cleared you and stuff, but it's just, it's hard to explain for people who haven't really experienced it. You just kind of have to, you just do a lot of reps, a lot of practice reps. You just put in the grind, like you said, and each day you get a little bit better. And that's what eventually gets you into that like aha moment, basically.
So you said something about the way that you tore your ACL. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still scared of the way that I tore my ACL, because I did tear mine contact.
Okay.
So I was shielding the ball, like just like keeping the girl away from it, and she stepped on my ankle, so she basically planted for me and then fell into my knee, so her whole body went into my knee. And I have it on video. I still sometimes watch it. I know that's not healthy, but I still go back and watch it sometimes just to remind me like what I went through. But to this day, shielding is still terrifying. So it gets easier, but sometimes, you know, it's okay to still be scared.
Yeah, you still think about it a little bit. And for you, you know, if you and I were working together, I would have basically made you do that with me over and over and over again. I would have taken, I most likely would have started with like, you know, those exercise balls. I would have taken those and just started pushing a little bit, you know, and then start being a little more aggressive. And I think I posted about this a little while ago. I was working with a soccer girl last summer, and she was a little bit scared of that too. Cause it's just, when you're shielding, it's just, you're getting hit over and over and over again while you're trying to keep that girl from getting the ball. And it's scary, especially in your situation, because that's exactly how you tore your ACL. So I think it's something that me personally, as a rehab specialist, I would have made you do over and over again, just to help build up that confidence as much as possible. Again, it's hard to replicate the same game intensity and speed, but I feel like with more practice, you could have been maybe a little bit better prepped in a way. Again, it's very, very specific for you, but I feel like that's something, at least for me, I would have worked on a ton with you.
I love that. That's great.
So a couple questions left. Somebody asked, this is probably a hard question to answer, but what was the most challenging part of your recovery? Just overall, what would you say was the hardest part of your recovery? It's a tough question.
Yeah, it's so hard, like in so many different ways. But I will say, one thing that made it just a little bit harder than other people's, I would say, is we won the Big 12 the year that I got hurt, and this is the selfish side of me coming out, and I know this, but just when you're going through an injury, like, you want so badly to be a part of that. And I know that I was, like, I'm on the team that, and I was a part of that, but I wasn't a part of
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
still, like, selfishly, like, think back about that, and I'm like, God, I wish I could have, like, experienced that, like, been on the field with my team, like, as we're, like, holding up the trophy,
Yeah.
and not on the sideline on crutches, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, like, that just made it that just the twist of the knife, you know, like, it's just a little bit tougher than it should have been. But yeah, the hardest part was honestly the team aspect of it. Just, like, I love, like, being out there and, like, grinding with my teammates daily and, like, pushing my body, like, further than it could go, and, like, going back to square one and learning how to take your first steps was a little bit of a shock for me. So that was definitely the hardest part.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's not that you aren't physically part of the team, but it's just the on-field camaraderie portion of it. Being able to say you contributed on the field is something very different that was taken away from you, you know, because you had surgery and stuff like that. So I can definitely see that being very challenging. And it's funny you say that, because all of my athletes tell me that, whether they miss a season, and you had a redshirt season, obviously, and it's like a lost season in a way. And particularly in your situation where you guys had such success on the field and you didn't feel like you got to be like a part of it, type of thing. It's very, very challenging. And I had a girl who played lacrosse, and her program went to the championship, and she wasn't able to be a part of that, you know, like for the entire, like, they were in the championship, and was very, very hard for her. And that's honestly one of my coolest stories ever had, because she rehabbed her butt off, and they actually made it back to the championship the following season.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And me and one of the owners at Healthy Baller, who trains her, like, we went to her game, and it was just like, it was such a surreal experience to see her work her butt off to get all the way back. And that's what I love to be a part of. It's really, really cool. It's like you said, you go from literally not being able to pick up your leg to being able to step back on the soccer field, like killing it on the soccer field again. And it's just, that is a culmination of the months and months and months and hours and hours and hours of hard work that no one sees. Your teammates don't know unless they've been through themselves. I know you had one teammate right now who's going through it, but the other ones who didn't go through that, they don't know exactly the grind that you had to go through. And it's just, I genuinely feel like anyone who's ever gone through an ACL rehab, we are all, like, just on the same team. We all just support one another no matter what it is. I think it's just a connection you feel with someone, and you can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. But the fact that we understand the grind and the work that you have to go through, it's just, I don't know, you can't really explain it. I think it's a really cool thing and I think that's how you and I can kind of we can just talk like we're doing right now, because we are able to connect on this crappy injury. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, all the girls that have had ACL, we always say, like, you're not in the ACL club until you're in it. Like, you're not in until you're in it. So only people who haven't been through it really get it. But
so the final question that I had for you is, in your entire rehab journey, what would you say is the most important thing you learned for yourself? I'm throwing a lot of hard questions at you today.
You are. The most important thing I've learned, the most impactful thing about this whole experience was just, like, it really did grow in my faith a lot. Like, I touched on it a little bit in my YouTube video, but I actually made my red shirt by half a game. So if I had even stepped on the field, like, in the second half, I wouldn't have gotten a red shirt. Like, the whole season would have been missed. And that's how I know, like, God's timing is just so perfect, because, like, I was able to get a 5th year of soccer and start my YouTube channel and like literally spend some of the best, like, 6 months with my best friends that I never would have gotten to do. And, like, even though, like, our last season wasn't great, it's not like it's the most successful season in history. Like, for me, it was my favorite season by far, easily. And I never would have gotten to pursue my master's degree. Like, there's all of these opportunities that came from 1 second tearing my ACL my
Yeah.
junior year. And it's just like, it's crazy to me. And it's really, really hard until you're out of it. And once you're done with rehab and you look back and you're like, I see it now. Like, I kind of see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. But that was definitely the most important thing that I've learned. I take it with me through my daily life. It's how I live my life now. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that I think you spoke about that a little bit in your vlog also. And I think that really resonated with me because I literally would not be in this profession if I didn't tear my ACL. And it's so wild to think about because my life literally has been changed by being in this profession because I love what I do. I love coming to work every single day, which is weird to say because a lot of my friends have jobs that they don't love and they're not passionate about. And that was me prior because I used to work for a big consulting firm and I was just like, I was staring at Excel for 40 hours a week. I was like, this is the most awful thing you could possibly be doing. And I was falling asleep at work and my commute was over an hour one way. It's just terrible. And the fact that at the time, and I think every athlete thinks this, when you tear your ACL, it is probably a top 5 worst moment that you can have in your life. But I think from both of us, we learned from that experience. And again, it's the glass half full side. It's like, what can you learn from an experience? It's like, don't think about the negativity about I, quote unquote, for you, lost a year of soccer. You think about what you gained from that, which is an extra year of eligibility. You gained better friendships, stronger friendships. You gained an amazing season. You said your best season that you enjoyed the most, at least, maybe not record wise or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about that. And I think that you learned a lot about yourself. You learned a lot about your faith, which I did as well. I just think that everything generally does happen for a reason. And these difficult times are meant to make you a little bit stronger, a little bit more resilient so you can handle a little bit more. So I think that's why your story resonated with me so well and why I felt like compelled to reach out to you and was like, I got to get Kylie on. I have to hear her story. I think other people need to hear her story even more so because I know that you already have a lot of followers, but I think hopefully anyone who listens to this is able to hear your story too. Yeah, so I definitely appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story with us. I think a lot of people, even my athletes that I work with, will be able to resonate with your story. So
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks for having me on, giving me the
yeah,
opportunity. I mean, it was really fun talking to you. I don't get to talk to people about like ACL stuff, and it's a
yeah,
huge part of my life. So yeah,
yeah. It's definitely something I can talk about this all day, every single day.
I know, me
It's
too.
something
I love it.
yeah, it's a crappy thing, but it's a fun thing at the same time if you can spin it that way and think about it that way. Because I think that, like you said, I don't think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you would not take back the ACL tear.
Oh, not at all.
Right. And
Not at all.
I'm the exact same way. It's one of the worst things and one of the best things to ever happen to me. I think it's just, you got to learn from what you're going through and recognize that it happens for a reason. And I think that that's something that's really, really challenging for athletes to understand while you're in the moment. You know, you and I are years out at this time. I'm a decade out at this time. But so it's a little bit easier for us to look at it from that perspective. But I think that thinking about that along the way is important for athletes to recognize.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's hard to sit here and tell someone who had surgery 3 days ago, like, you'll like this one day.
Yeah.
Looking back, like, it changed me as a person, but like, you have to let it change you as a person.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you have to be. I resisted for so long. Trust me, I was glass half empty for so long. And now I can look back and see, like, I am so different because of the injury, like as a person, not only as a player, but as a person. So
yeah. I
I'm
think
really thankful for it.
I'm much more empathetic now, particularly towards my patients, because I think that that's a big area that's neglected a little bit when you're dealing with patients, is that there needs to be empathy there because they're going through something. They whatever injury they're going through, they can't do whatever activity they love to do. So I think I try to put that into my practice a lot about just learning from my experience as a patient. And I think it only helps me basically. So yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming on. I hope that we are able to do this again sometime. I think that people can really, really learn from you even more so. And I know that you have some big things in store for you. I fully believe that. And I think that your social media has been a big I don't know, just a big resource for athletes. Like you said, you got a lot of DMs just asking you about your experience, and just, I think that it's really, really cool that you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone. Cause I think you told me before we hopped on that you weren't sure about putting it on there.
Yeah, I
Cause
really wasn't.
you said your podcast, and I watched a bunch of your videos. It's a lot of positivity. And then you get to, you almost pretty much in tears right away in the video. I think that's what caught me right away. I was like, oh gosh, this is serious. So I think it's really, really cool that you're so raw, so genuine, because that's what people need to see about ACL rehab. It's not all bad. Also, you grew from this. We both grew from this. So I think it's really, really cool that you're able to do that. Do you mind actually plugging in your social media, and if anyone wants to reach out to you, how they can do that?
Yeah, of course. So my YouTube is just my name, so it's Kylie Ross, and I pretty much reply to all my comments on my YouTube videos. So if you want to comment on them, go for it. And then my Instagram is _ Kylie Ross. So okay. KYLIEROSS.
Perfect. And I will also put all of your social media in the show notes, and I'll also put a link to the original vlog that kind of got you and I started in the first place. So I'll put all that in our show notes so that people can see all that and hopefully reach out to you. And I do recommend all of you guys reach out to Kylie if you have any questions. She's a really, really, really cool person. I feel like I know you already, even though we obviously have never formally met before. So I think it's really cool that we were able to connect through. And I think that's honestly the coolest thing about social media nowadays, is that you're able to connect with people really, really far away, and that we're able to do this today. So I definitely appreciate you coming on, and I know that a lot of people will definitely be able to relate and resonate with this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun. So
yeah. Awesome.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to like and subscribe and share it on your social media platforms. If you're interested, I have started an ACL Mastering Group, which is a growing library of content centered around ACL rehab. It has exercises ranging from immediate post-op to late-stage sport-specific movements and everything in between. It's a growing library and currently holds over 250 videos. There's content centered around assessments, movement breakdowns, exercise breakdowns, case studies, and a whole lot more. You also gain access to a private forum where you can engage with like-minded people, ask questions, share research articles, and share resources. If you're interested, please feel free to click the link below. Thank you for watching.